This video is another subject area model example. It goes along with Chapter 8 in our Hoberman book, and this one is entitled ATM Machine. In this example, I'd like to go from start to finish thinking about the entities and the relationships and the subject area model surrounding the automatic teller machine. I want you to think about the last time you went to an ATM machine. Think about the entities, think about the things that are there, think about the things that the bank needs to track, and also if you have a receipt. From an ATM machine, maybe in your purse or your billfold or laying there in your car or wherever, why don't you grab that receipt and take a look at it as we start trying to figure out what the entities are and what the relationships of those entities are. When I look at an ATM machine and I look at the receipt and I look at the process, I really see five big entities. I see the customer, um, who's the human that walks up to the machine. I see the card, and the card has certain data on it, its numbers, all of that kind of stuff. I see the accounts. Because when you open up the card and you start your transaction, after you put in your PIN, it asks you which account you want to use. So accounts would be part of the the data model. I think the transaction would also be part of the data model. And the reason I say transaction rather than withdrawal or deposit or balance inquiry, aren't those all just types of transactions? So we could use a specialization hierarchy to say that a transaction could be lots of different types, but all transactions are going to have the date and time of the transaction and lots of other common information. So let's put that in transaction and use a specialization hierarchy. We'll do that in a subsequent slide. Let's just get these basic relationships and entities worked out. And then I think there's the bank entity. Now, the bank entity is kind of special because the bank entity, one bank could issue the card and hold the account, but you could have gone to a different bank to actually log in and do the transaction. So I think there'll be several relationships back to the bank entity. Notice I'm not saying the home bank and the away bank. I'm just saying bank in general because we're, again, thinking about entities, not specific instances of entities. Let's see what relationships that we can draw. So here I've added the relationships that I see in my head. I've labeled them with words, or most of them with words, and I've put the cardinality on them. Let's go through each of these relationships and see if you agree. Let's start with the customer to card relationship. A customer carries a card. So I have carries. Now, can a customer carry 0 cards? Yes. Can a customer carry 0 or more cards? Well, yeah, I've got several ATM cards. A couple with the same bank because one of them's for my business, one of them's my personal card. And so, yeah, a customer can carry 0 or more cards with, and a card has to be issued to one and only one customer. Then I look at the bank to card relationship. A bank issues a card. A bank can issue 0 or more debit cards or ATM cards, and a card is issued by one and only one bank because when you look at the card, it says what bank issued the card. So you can see that customers' relationship to cards and the bank's relationships to cards. Now, let's look at the relationship between cards and accounts. Now, I say that an account can be on 0 or more cards, but a card must have at least one account. It makes no sense at all for an ATM card to exist without an account on it. Makes no sense at all. But could you have an account that's not on an ATM card? Yes. Could you have an account on multiple cards? Well, let me think about my wife and I as an example. My account is on her card as a second checking, and her checking account is on my card as a second checking, but on her card as a primary checking. So you can see that an account can be on many cards, and a card can have many accounts. An account, though, is related back to the bank because the bank holds the account. The bank holds the money in the account, or whatever holds the account. So I have a relationship there between a bank and an account. And a bank has one or more accounts, and an account belongs to one and only one bank. Um, Usually the issuing bank of the card and the bank that holds the account of the card happen to be the same bank. And that relationship, I could only put one of those in and it would still work. But I just have them both here because both of the top bank relationships, just to kind of show that there is a relationship between a bank and an account. Now, let's look at a transaction. An account can have 0 or more transactions, and a transaction belongs to one and only one account. So a withdrawal would be a transaction, a deposit would be a transaction, a balance inquiry would be a transaction. So we can just go through and look at all of the various transactions. And then notice that I have a bank settles a transaction. So if you go to a bank that's not your bank, you go to a foreign bank, as it's called, you go to a branch of somebody else's bank, and you get money out of the ATM, that bank settles the transaction, hands you the cash. So you would have your home bank that holds the account and holds the card, issues the card, but you would have a second bank actually settling the transaction. So, and you're not a customer of that bank. That bank settles the transaction with the other bank, and there's some data flowing around, but let's not worry about that because we're just trying to model the ATM machine. So a bank is the one that settles the transaction, and it might be the same bank or a different bank. So a bank settles 0 or more transactions, and a transaction is settled by one and only one bank. So I took that previous entity, that previous subject area model, SAM, and have added a specialization hierarchy for the different types of transactions, just because, well, there are different types of transactions: the deposit transaction, the withdrawal transaction, the balance inquiry transaction, and the transfer transaction. Are there other transactions you can do on an ATM machine? On some, yeah. But this is just a good example of what's possible. So I'm going to go here into Draw IO, and I'm going to add all of the entities. Be right back. So I've put all of the entities here by grabbing the entity here from the scratch pad and drug them where I wanted them and put the names on them. Now I'm going to add the relationships of customer to card, customer to card. Oops, Control Z, I hit the wrong thing. Customer to card, bank to card, card to account, account to transaction, and then I'm going to put in a specialization hierarchy here. I'm going to shrink that down a little, make it so it's easier to see what's going on. And then I'm going to put a line here from transaction to the specialization hierarchy. And then I'm going to come here and put a line from there over to withdrawal, and a line from there over to deposit, and a line from there over to balance inquiry, and a line from there over to statement, and a line from there over to transfer. So you can see that now usually they're all grouped coming out of the bottom of the specialization hierarchy, so I'm going to just move those all there out at the bottom just to make that a little neater. But you can see that they all come out of the specialization hierarchy, and then we can add all of our arrowheads to that and make that look nice and pretty. Let's move that arrow over to there. There we go. That looks nice. Let's move that up so that it disappears. Boom. Okay. So you can see that the specialization hierarchy exclusive comes down and feeds all the different types of withdrawal, transfer, deposit, statement, balance, inquiry, or any other. So now that we've put the relationships on, let's put the crow's feet on. Customer to card and bank to card. Oh, we forgot about the bank to account and bank to transaction relationship, didn't I? Bank to account. Now, having relationships running together is not a good idea when you're dealing with a subject area model, because we want them to be clear that they're separate, that they're not the same, that they don't start the same, and they don't end the same. So, I am going to make sure that my relationships here don't overlap and don't cross, because I want them to clearly show that they're a part of that they're clearly independent relationships. So a customer to card, the customer has card belongs to one and only one customer, and a customer can have 0 or more cards. A card can be issued by 0 or more bank, though a bank can issue 0 or more cards, and a card is issued by one and only one bank. One and only one bank. An account. A bank has one or more accounts, because a bank can't exist without an account. So I'm going to say one or more, and then I'm going to say an account belongs to one and only one bank. A bank settles. And you could put the text of the relationship on the relationship here in Draw.io by clicking on the relationship and typing in a word. So a bank settles 0 or more transactions, but a transaction is settled by one and only one bank. A card has many accounts, and an account can be on many cards. So an account could be on 0 or more cards, but a card must have at least one account. So you can see there's the relationship. A card can be on 0 or more cards, but a card has one and only one account. A transaction, an account can have many transactions. Many transactions, but a transaction belongs to one and only one account. So we've got all of those, and then all of these specialization hierarchies, we just want to remove the arrows from them. So I'm going to select all of the relationships here in the specialization hierarchy by holding the control key down and selecting them all, and then I'm just going to come up here and say none, and now they're all nice and pretty. And then we can add the words if we want to add the words of a bank holds the account. The bank issues the card. The customer carries the card. The card contains multiple accounts or accesses multiple accounts. Probably need to scoot that down so that you can see a little better. You can see that an account has many debits and credits or transactions, so that would be like has. So you can see that we have made our entity relationship diagram here. Now that arrow's still not doing what I want it to do. Darn it, go over here. I want you over here. There we go. So you see that I had to fight with it a bit, but there's our subject area model that describes a bank and an ATM and an ATM card and how an ATM machine might work. I'd like to say thank you for watching this demonstration on a subject area model. This presentation is copyright 2020 by James Imbrano, PhD. All rights are reserved.